Hi, welcome to this Physionic extract wherein I'll be showing you a bit of data on a particular treatment that is being used for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy.
Learn your body, a science-based education.
Now, this particular research comes from a paper that I dissected, and of course you can check out those notes as well as, on anything that I don't cover in this particular piece of content, as well as the paper itself is linked for you. Now, this particular paper is really interesting because it is a clinical trial wherein they're testing a particular drug or a particular treatment on kids that have Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is a severe form of muscular dystrophy wherein they are not producing, either they're not producing or they're not producing the right length of the dystrophin protein, which anchors the muscle cells and is able to allow the actual contraction and use of those muscle cells. Now, unfortunately, the problem with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy is that eventually these kids will die. So having a treatment is imperative, is unbelievably important. And what we're going to be showing here is that this treatment could be effectual in terms of at least lessening the symptoms of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy and decreasing it to a less severe form of Duchenne's muscular dystrophy or muscular dystrophy in general. So this treatment, how it works is it's an exon skipping treatment. Now let me explain what that is. An exon is a DNA segment that can be read. So when our DNA is read and expressed, that would be typically an exon. So that exon has the blueprint of information, specifically exon 51, has the blueprint of information for dystrophin, or a particular segment of dystrophin, as dystrophin is an incredibly large protein. So when it gets expressed in normal individuals, it eventually gets packaged and created into the full form of the protein, and then we're allowed to move normally like we normally would. However, with these particular individuals, they have a mutation that doesn't allow that full expression of this particular dystrophin protein, or in some cases doesn't lead to the dystrophin protein at all being expressed in any sort of functional fashion. So what they're doing is that they're using an exon skipping treatment. So where the mutation is, they can't necessarily attack that mutation specifically. So what they're doing is that they're allowing this, what's called a morpholino, which is a segment or a molecule that will bind onto the RNA that is produced from the expression of this particular gene. And instead of expressing the mutation, what the morpholino does is it blocks the further translation of that mutation. So it skips over the mutation and continues to compile and produce the protein based off of the available information minus the mutation. Now, the problem with that is that it's not a complete protein and therefore will not function as well as a complete form of the protein as with healthy individuals. However, the hope is that this will allow enough of functional protein to lower the effect of this muscular dystrophy to a more manageable level and a more functional level so that these individuals can live a longer and healthier life. So with that said, with that explanation out of the way, again, this is a clinical trial and it's a small sample size. So if this necessarily applies going forward to many other people, that's yet to be determined. But based off this data, they had 4 participants that were given a placebo, so they did not receive the treatment. They had 4 participants that consumed 30 milligrams per kilogram of eteplirsen, which is the morpholino, the treatment that we're talking about. And then you had another group of 4 kids that consumed 50 milligrams per kilogram of the treatment. And all the kids were between the ages of 7 and 13 years of age, and they all had to have this exon 51 mutation. So it had to be very specific to this particular mutation leading to Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. And they consumed their treatment, the placebo, the 30 milligrams or the 50 milligrams, for a 24-week period, and then they were tested after that 24-week period. Now, because of ethical reasons, if they find that the treatment is effective, they have to switch the placebo group to a treatment group. So then they end up spreading that out between the 30 milligram and 50 milligram groups. So what do they find? Well, here you're looking at microscopy images. So if you see fluorescence, that means that you are seeing dystrophin protein being produced. So that is a good sign. And what we find is with the treatment, there is dystrophin protein being produced. But you can tell that with just 12 weeks of treatment, there isn't that much being produced. So it is a time-sensitive treatment. So you need to be on it for quite some time to actually see increases in dystrophin protein. And even with the placebo group that consumed it after the initial 24 weeks, so the pre-treatment for the placebo, they had been on their placebo for 24 weeks, you see that there's no dystrophin after 24 weeks. So there is no placebo effect up to that point. And then after the fact, they end up switching to one of the actual treatments, and you find, yet again, just like with the initial treatment groups, that you see increases in this dystrophin fluorescence. So again, with greater green fluorescence, you're seeing more of this dystrophin protein being produced. And the final data piece that I want to quick mention is a functional outcome. So while we do see increases in dystrophin protein, given it is a truncated form of the dystrophin protein, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is actually functional and that is going to lead to better outcomes. So they had to do a functional test. So what they did is a 6-minute walk test to see how far these dystrophin individuals can travel with the treatment or without the treatment, the placebo group. And what they find is that the placebo group does decrease in their ability to walk over time, which is really unfortunate. However, the positive is that the treatment groups from the beginning seem to maintain their walking ability over time, and it doesn't seem to be decreasing. So that's incredibly positive news. So once they found that out, once they actually had some information on the treatment, then they had to switch the placebo group to the treatment, and you can see that there is a delayed effect, that it takes some time, but it slowly starts to increase back upwards as well for the placebo group. So it is positive information that the treatment is being effectual and does have a positive effect in terms of functional outcomes, as well as producing a dystrophin protein that can be used for a better health outcome for these individuals, which is huge news. However, of course, it's not going to get rid of the muscular dystrophy disease. It's just going to lessen its lethality and its impact in these young individuals' lives. So we still need a cure going forward. However, hopefully you found this informative. Hopefully you learned something that you can take away from this. And with that said, I hope I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with you in the very next one. Have a good one, guys. Bye.